But it seems as if, right, this doctor, in a way, whether he wanted to or not, called these anti-abortion groups bluff by saying, I'm going to go ahead and do this abortion, and then we'll see if you're going to move ahead with suing me. And it leaves this law in somewhat of a gray area.
Calling the anti-abortion groups bluff is exactly what the doctor did. The law was crafted in such a way that made it difficult to challenge in court, and he went right for it, and he did it with his own name. I mean, the anti-abortion force in the United States is so strong and self-contained and obsessive. This conversation will probably get clipped and spiral into their dark web and end up with a ton of feedback from it. Like, they obsess and they go back and back and back. And so the fact that he put his name out there and attached himself to it, he knows exactly what he's getting himself into. And it's quite brave. And I think it's really showing women in Texas that not only is there doctors that are out there that are still to some degree willing to take that risk, but really have their interest on their side. Look, Planned Parenthood is getting calls and calls and calls from women in the state who are saying, I don't understand. I'm just confused. Can't even figure out if I'm pregnant or not. The biggest question on the Planned Parenthood site is, how far along can I get an abortion? And that question has gone up 100%, double since last year. Women are confused.
Sure, Michael, I want to read for you from Slate on the Republican silence on this abortion ban. The GOP's reaction to Texas's 6-week abortion ban has been silent, punctuated by lies about the law itself. The most obvious answer is that Republicans are now the dog that caught the car, fearful of the political ramifications of their own victory. Your reaction?
Yeah, I mean, look, Yasmin, I think nationally, I don't know if this is exactly what the Republican National Committee would want to focus on. I think if you look at all statistical analysis and data at this point, it does appear that at least this early on, Republicans seem to be in a pretty good spot to regain control of the House. I think the last thing that any strategist who would be honest with you would want is to risk ginning up energy on the other side, which could make that task of regaining control of the House a lot tougher by virtue of what you see in Texas. And so I think nationally, I think they're probably waiting to see what the circuit court's going to do. I think in some ways the Supreme Court honestly doesn't really want to get involved with this at all, at least from the perspective of Chief Justice John Roberts. And so I think the Republican Party, again, nationally is in a quagmire. I think the state party may be enjoying this thing. But again, I don't think they're looking at the overall impact this could have on Republicans' odds of being able to regain control of the House and maybe even the Senate, for that matter.
Two things. What makes you think that the Supreme Court doesn't want to get involved? Because it certainly seems like it would be headed that way, especially if something is brought up against Dr. Braid, because to challenge, of course, the constitutionality of this law, it could go all the way up, if not beyond the Texas Supreme Court, to the federal Supreme Court, to the Supreme Court itself, to overturn the Texas law, A. And why not speak out? If this isn't necessarily the narrative they want for the Republican Party come the midterms, why not speak up?
Well, look, I don't think they want to take the risk of angering a very important part of the Republican base, Yasmin, and that's evangelicals. I mean, let's be honest. That has been an ardent part of Republican voters for the last 40, 50 years now. So I understand politically, electorally, why they're being silent. Now, we could debate morally or ethically if that's right or not. That's a different conversation outside of the realm of electoral politics. As it pertains to the Supreme Court, I think Chief Justice Roberts, specifically Roberts, would likely not to have to deal with this at that level. Now, there are some others, Amy Coney Barrett and other conservative justices that I think would love an opportunity to rule in some matter on this case. And I think the question becomes, does the Supreme Court completely side with Texas? Or do the Supreme Court say, well, maybe we're going to lessen how late a woman can have an abortion? I think that the jury is still out on that question as it pertains to how the court will ultimately decide. But I think from the Chief Justice's perspective, Yasmin, he has almost been very clear in many ways, and a lot of legal scholars have stated this, on his unwillingness to want to sort of get into these state and political issues. And so I really think in some ways he may have lost control of the court, at least by virtue of the recent decision that we saw from the conservatives in the court. And then you saw, again, the Chief Justice's silence saying, I don't think this is the right decision. We should let the state figure this out. We should not be getting involved in this. So, again, Yasmin, I think from the conservative side, from the Republican side, I get why the state may be enjoying this. But nationally, I'm just telling you, Yasmin, there's a lot of risk here electorally that could really energize people on the left that cause Republicans to not be able to regain control of the House, which is their ultimate goal in 2022.
Emily, last word to you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree with Michael on the politics, but it's not just Democrats who are going to be enraged by this. Think about who's impacted by this. Reproductive aged women, mothers, women who swung the 2018 House elections, women who swung the 2020 presidential elections, and women and mothers are mad. We are tired of the last year and a half of having to homeschool children, not know if we're able to go back to work, not able to have regular childcare. Our kids are in school right now getting quarantined and we're going back to work, and it's a mess. And if all we can remember about the Republican Party is that when they were in this moment, they were anti-abortion obsessed and passed a law that is unrealistic for most women for when they know they are pregnant or not, for the sole goal of passing through some very extreme law that is ideological. Women are going to remember that because it is insulting, and they will come for the ballot box in 2022, and they will remember which party was focused on getting them actual policies like paid leave, and like the Democratic Party, and which party was anti-abortion obsessed.
Emily, Tisch Sussman, Michael Singleton, thank you both, guys.